Hello, and welcome to Essential Alchemy. Alchemy is defined as the power or process that changes or transforms something in a mysterious or impressive way. My hope is that the information in this podcast can help you transform your mood, your energy, physical health, or even connect some dots to help you shift your mental or emotional state. I'm your host, Jodi Cohen, a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, functional practitioner, lifelong learner, and founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, a company that sells proprietary blends of high-quality organic or wild-crafted essential oil remedies designed to help you return to your ideal mental, physical, and emotional state. You can find out more about me and my company at vibrantblueoils.com. And with that, let's get started with today's episode. Hi, I'm Jodi Cohn, your host, and today I am joined by my very dear friend, Jaban Moore, who is a functional doctor in chronic illness and an expert in parasites, which is something I get a ton of questions about. And, oils can be used in a very specific way for parasites, but there are much better solutions. So, welcome, Jabin. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. Parasites is one of my favorite things to talk about. Uh, you know, from the where do they come from to what the heck is that in my stool? And are you serious? We don't have parasites, all those kinds of conversations.
How did you I'm super curious because how did you kind of develop an interest or start becoming an expert in parasites?
I had Lyme disease myself. And when I had Lyme disease, one of the commonalities that people run into is that they'll get a little bit better, but they don't get all the way well. So I'm always in that search of what else. So then I started having clients bring in literal parasites that they've been pooping out. And I'm like, what is this? So I start doing research and I come to find out that more than 100 million people in the world are diagnosed with strongyloides, a type of parasite that is horrible. A million Americans get diagnosed with Giardia every year. And there's even studies to show that about 90% of the population of the world at some point in their existence will get parasites and have a pathogenic type reaction because there are non-pathogenic parasites that are in us already, but I'm talking about something that affects your health in a negative light.
Yeah, and I'm curious because you work with chronic illness. Do you find like a comorbidity where, if someone has Lyme, they often have parasites. If they have other, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So honestly, if you have Lyme, your immune system's suppressed. And when your immune system is suppressed, you're going to be more apt to get anything and everything out there. Right. So parasites have, what are they? What is their job? Their job for your body, because they do work some ways in symbiosis with you. Their job is to clean waste. So if I'm toxic due to these Lyme bacteria releasing endotoxins, which can be ammonia and other things, so they're going to eat that up. They're little Pac-Men, right? So your body brings parasites in to eat it up. And then unfortunately, you're not getting rid of the Lyme. We live in an environment that's completely full of toxicity. I believe there was a study that showed that for every person, you have 240 pounds of toxicity imported in the United States per day in the United States, right? That's 240 pounds of toxin just for you today and for me today. That's an incredible amount of toxin. Well, parasites love that stuff. So we're just constantly under assault all the time from this toxicity. And so when parasites get in there from either from being your body suppressed from Lyme or those toxins, that's what they're in there for. So the comorbidity is extraordinarily high. If you have gut symptoms, if you have Lyme, if you have mold, you're going to have parasites.
Interesting. Probably heavy metals too. How do most people get parasites? Most of us think we go to an intriguing country and drink the water. Is that the only way to get parasite?
I smile because that is the most common thought. But here's the reality. If you have ever been to a lake and got water in your mouth, you could have got a parasite. If you have an animal that you pet and then touch your mouth, a doorknob that you pet and touch your mouth, if you touch dirt, if you have a pet that scoots its butt across your bed ever, or just lays in your bed, you probably have gotten a parasite. But even more than that, if you eat food, you probably have a parasite. Here's why. People are like, well, that's only in raw meat. Well, yeah, it's more likely in sushi or a steak that's raw. However, if you eat a vegetable and there's been a parasite that left a spore on that under a leaf, under a little part of the strawberry, in the strawberry or raspberry, banana, whatever, there's going to be parasites there. I have clients that will ozonate and do vinegar baths for their food, and you'll see parasites just crawling out of your vegetables and fruits. And I mean, visible sized parasites crawling out of your food that you were going to eat. And most of us don't go through that work to clean them out, like some of those clients I'm talking about. But the thing is, you aren't always vulnerable to them. It's if your body is vulnerable, then you'll pick up the parasites. So that's from, mold, emotional trauma, nervous system weakness, Lyme disease, toxicity from heavy metals. Those sorts of things make you vulnerable. So I don't want to scare everybody, be like, you all have parasites, you're all pathogenic, you're all sick. No, it's you're all running into it every day. This is what it looks like if you're pathogenic and sick from it, and here's some reasons why you're vulnerable, and here's some ways to get better.
One, it's interesting too, because if you're pathogenic and sick, then it's even more important to address the parasites because it's one less, burden for your body to clean up, right?
It is, parasites are probably the first thing I work on after I get people into a safe environment. So the first thing is, of course, get your body and your environment cleaned up from retoxing, right? So eat clean, get away from mold, get out of trauma, right? Then immediately I turn to looking at, can we effectively detox out whatever it is that we know you have, whether it's Lyme or mold or otherwise. You can't if you have parasites often, because parasites can be multicellular organisms that can be in the liver, they can be in the gallbladder, they can be in the colon, and they can block things up. So they actually release, there are specific types of worms, some of them roundworms, that release endotoxins that cause the pulsatility, so the movement of your bowel to slow down, creating constipation because they don't want to be released out, right? They also block up your detoxification pathways, like I was saying, liver, lymph, gallbladder. So they actually are clogging. They're big enough to clog. So if I go and say, well, mold is your biggest issue, you're living in mold, let me detox mold first without addressing the parasites. I start working on mold, I flush it through whatever matter or means that you want to flush it. And then it gets to the liver, which is your filtration organ, right? And then it just recirculates because it can't get through it because your body is burdened by parasites.
Amazing. And just for people that are listening that are kind of their curiosity is piqued, what symptoms might they experience if they have parasites?
So there are some more unique to parasites, and then there's ones that can be lost amongst the other chronic illnesses, right? So some parasite ones, if you have a lot of skin rashing, butt itching, grinding teeth, worse over the full moon type symptoms, those are gonna be really key on, like, hey, you probably got parasites. Then if you have, maybe not as key because it can be mold or other things too, but if you have a dairy intolerance, I'm probably leaning toward parasites. GI symptoms, whether that's constipation, diarrhea, bloating, IBS, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, leaning toward parasites. But fatigue and brain fog can be parasites too. In an autopsy of MS patients, so autopsy, so they had passed away, 100 out of 100 had nematode parasites in their brain. That's incredible.
Wow, that's huge. Okay, so now, you could be talking about me, not great with dairy, itchy skin, all those things. How do you have tests that you run to do you have different kinds of parasites that you would treat differently, or what's your next step?
So there are tests. I don't love them. Stool samples are the gold standard right now. So if you go into Western medicine, you go, hey, I think I might have parasites. They're going to say, go run a stool sample. Well, here's why that can be a not so great option. One, if you poop at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., it's morning to night. A parasite may be more active or less active. So you get about a 60% difference in your stool sample flora just from morning to night in some studies. Also, different times of the month. Parasites are more active during the full moon. They may be in hibernation at other times of the month. So if you poop outside of the full moon or outside of that specific parasite's life cycle, you may not get it. Also, stool samples, go to a lab where a technician has been taught to find that brown smelly stuff, which is your poop, put it on a slide and look at it, look for eggs. If you literally put a parasite, a dead one, but a parasite on the top, visible, full size, they're not trained to look for that. That's not what they're going to test. So stool samples at this point aren't great. They're also testing for parasites local to you. And remember, we talked about it's in your food. Well, where does your food come from? everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're going to the farmer's market and you're buying it from a farmer you know that grew it themselves, meaning in season, right? Then you're getting fruits and veggies and meats from all around the entire world shipped into your local area, which bring parasites from around the entire world. So then the stool sample that you're doing is not testing for the stuff in Africa and Asia. It's primarily tested for the stuff local to you. So again, stool samples aren't great. You can do a spinal tap where they look for the parasites in your brain. Like I said, that's very common for people with certain diseases. I don't recommend a spinal tap. So really for me, what it goes down to is I do a symptom survey. And if you match with all these symptoms of parasites, then likely what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start treating and you're going to start seeing them coming out in probably like 70, 75% of cases, especially if you're willing to do a little investigation with your friendly little throwaway chopsticks.
Wow. Okay, so that's super helpful. Tell me, do you start everyone on the same protocol? Are there variables? What is the typical parasite protocol?
There's definitely variables. So people come into my clinic of all different abilities to heal. So some are very chronic, very sensitive. Their nervous systems are overwhelmed. They've been that way for a while. So we start very, very gently. First of all, just getting the detox pathways opened up, which is a whole podcast of its own, but we make sure things are opening up using a lot of different tools, whether it's flow preso lymph work, colon hydrotherapies, colonic, coffee enemas, castor oil, all the good things there. Then we can add herbs for detoxification like milk thistle, um, and N-acetylcysteine, glutathione, again, depending upon the person's ability to tolerate.
So liver
This
supporting nutrients and lymph supporting and gallbladder supporting therapies.
Yeah, so we can start very gently. If we're
Okay.
getting straight to the parasite conversation, I've got some favorite herbs. You've got more of your neems, vidanga, your blutenzi. These are a little more gentle from what I've seen. You can then get into your cloves, oreganos, which are kind of more in the middle ground, and then your nonis, your black walnuts, and your wormwoods. They're a little bit more powerful. Of course, you can take less and work your way up, but I have a scale in my clinic that I've taught my doctors. I'm like, hey, look. So, for instance, Miranda Supreme, which is a product from Supreme Nutrition, that's a pretty strong product. If you do a full dose of that, which is different by different body sizes, you do a full dose of that, that can hit pretty hard. If you do Para One from Cellcore, which is Mimosa Pudica, that's usually fairly gentle. And if you need to start gentle, we start gentle.
Awesome. Okay. And then I know there's some cycling. So like let's just use Para One because that's a product my listeners are familiar with. Do you cycle it around the full moon, certain times, certain days on, certain days off? How do you like to do that?
So it depends on where the person is. If you're chronically ill with parasites, and this is like step one for us, then I'm probably going to put you on a course for anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks straight
Hmm.
to just really remove the biggest amount of organism that I can. That's what I did.
Okay.
Now, once you are past the initial, now we've got to do some more pulsing because there's cyst form parasites that are wrapped up in fat, protecting themselves, hibernating away from where the herb is going to be. So then we do just during the full moon, we actually go and do anywhere from a 3 to 10 day spread where we do a pulse of antiparasitics. And then we stop, let those parasites think they're safe, and then pulse again at the next full moon. And that just allows for us to get, a big hit first for those who are chronically ill, and then come back later and then pulse and kind of do the cleanups over the next few months.
Interesting. Okay. So hit hard for 3 to 4 weeks straight with like for Para One, do you do two in the morning, two at night, or how do you like to?
It's hard to give an exact amount, but let's say an
Okay.
adult female. Let's just
Yeah.
say an adult female, 140 pounds, right? An average female size. Um, I'm probably gonna do Para One. I'm probably gonna do 4 pills at night,
Oh, okay.
1 hour away from anything. And then I'm going to combine with that Para 2 because Para 1 to me is parasite glue. It sticks to stuff and pulls it out. It's not as antimicrobial, meaning toxic to the parasite, as the neem and vidanga and the other things that are in Para 2, which I use as more of the antimicrobial piece. And that's one where I'll do about three twice a day. And that one can be around food. So that's a little easier to take twice a day than the para one, where it's more of a hassle for people to take away from things.
And then their para 3 is kind of the clove one. Is that something you add in then too?
I do. Para 3 is really strong. So I tend to do about 30 drops 3 times a day when I take it myself. And I'm kind of just giving out my doses or for the average person doses. Um, and that's strong. So that definitely can create some of that Herxheimer reactions. That's where you're going to need some more of those detox and drainage therapies that I mentioned earlier. But I do that, and I've got people where I do that where it's a full month at the start if they can tolerate it. But I've also got people where it's a week on, week off, or even a couple of days on and off. And it's really dependent on how you feel. So if you take it and you feel like you got the flu, you've got disrupted, upset stomach. It's too much for you too quick, which is why we start down there at that para 1, 2 first. I actually don't go straight to para 3. I do in the middle. I use a Byron White product, which is AP, which is kind of that middle between para 2 and 3 as far as the likelihood of creating a side effect, which would be that Herx. So just depending on who you are, there's the stair steps of building a program specific to your abilities.
And for anyone who doesn't know what Hooks is, can you define what that is and what happens?
Yeah, so Herx, die-off reaction, detox reaction, I use those interchangeably. And it's what happens when your body can no longer handle cleaning out the amount of toxicity. So when I give a protocol and there's a die-off reaction, so your body feels worse because parasites are dying in your body, then your liver, your detox pathways have to clean those things out. You can feel flu-like, you feel achy, you can feel honestly hungover. So that's what I always compare it to is if you ever had too much fun in college and you drank too much, woke up in the morning not feeling well, you're toxic, right? So too much parasite cleansing can create a toxic reaction. And then after that, you feel better when you stopped drinking and your body cleaned itself out. So that's why we've got to add that extra detox support in there so you can handle that toxic reaction.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I'm all for that. I'm all about drainage. What are some of your well, first of all, I'm curious, do you start with making sure people are having regular bowel movements, or where do you when you're kind of looking at drainage and unpacking that, do you have, like, a preferred course of action, or
I definitely have like my starter kit, like I was talking about earlier. Make sure you're in a safe place. It comes with, do you poop at least once fully every single day? The goal would be 2 to 3 times, or at least once with every large meal. Not everybody can do that. Immediately, I've had somebody came to my clinic. They were going 1 time per month, and I
gosh.
was just like, okay. And even with medication, they could not get themselves to daily. So there are some caveats to that, but the goal is definitely one full movement every day. And I use anything from simple things like magnesium citrate. Magnesium citrate is simple, easy, really low side effect risk, up to bowel mover from Cellcore, which also low risk, but a little stronger. So not everybody needs that strength. And then from there, I've gone into aloe, and there's some really concentrated aloes out there that can just be really effective. I found one from Orthomolecular that I liked, but I'm just there's a lot of other things. You do Senna tea, you can do exercise and movement's going to help you.
Yeah.
Draining lymph is going to help you. So stimulating the vagus nerve can help you go to the bathroom. It
Oh,
just
yeah.
depends on the person.
No, we have a lot of people that use our parasympathetic blend to have a bowel movement. It often, people will hear their stomach, like, kind of turn on after they use it. That's great.
And nervous system is such a key portion that is honestly missed too often when you're talking to people that are focused on organisms, right? So we get so focused on, oh, I have Lyme, parasites, mold, and we forget that even when you clean that stuff out, your body still has to go back to normal. The body is really good at adapting to survive. It's really bad. It's actually terrible at taking away those adaptations to get back to a baseline. So sometimes you have to take down some of those adaptations just to get your body moving forward enough to even address parasites.
So what you're saying is that we're so used to being dysfunctional and sick that we accommodate around them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. My dog does sleep in the bed and sometimes makes up space, and so I, you know, kind of allow for him to spread out and make myself as small as possible. It's exactly what you're saying. It's interesting too that some of the things that you mentioned that are symptoms of parasites, like teeth grinding. Can you elaborate on that? Most of the people that I know grind their teeth, and I don't think they realize it's parasites.
That's one of those ones that is probably the most common talked about parasite symptom. That's very unique. What are other reasons people grind their teeth? Well, stress. And that is a valid reason why. But if you're not stressed and you're still grinding teeth, you really need to look into parasites. And it's just due to the, again, stress that parasites are putting out into your body, and it causes you to end up grinding your teeth. I don't have a further explanation than that, but it is such a common symptom.
No, I've heard that before too, and it's interesting. Everything you mentioned, I'm like, "Oh, that sounds like me." Um, so I'm curious, if you're not using your chopsticks in your toilet bowl, how do you know if things are moving out and getting better?
Well, I mean, as symptoms reduce, things are getting better. So that's a piece of it. And then you can look for blood work. So there's a lot of blood work that I run that suggests parasites, such as eosinophils elevated above 5, likely means you have some sort of parasite situation going on. If your liver, ALT, AST, alkaline phos are elevated outside of the range, it's showing that your liver is in duress. One of the common reasons I see the liver is in duress is parasites. If you have anemia, so iron deficiency, it's very, very common with parasites. I've had 0 people come to my clinic who have not been able to get over iron anemia once they get their gut healed and sealed after doing some parasite work.
Oh my god, I just need to hover on that point because, I have a teenage daughter. All of her friends are anemic. I don't think anyone has ever told them to consider parasites. That's amazing.
Oh, you just hit a topic that I probably talk about maybe too often because I get a lot of young women in my clinic that are dealing with gut issues, right? And I'm a virtual clinic a lot of the time, about 98% virtual. So I get on a call and there's this what looks like a healthy 20 something year old woman on the other end who feels miserable. They've got IBS, they've got cramping, they got menstrual issues, whether it's too heavy and cramping and just miserable, or they have diarrhea where they go to the bathroom 6, 8 times a day. And I'm just talking through this with them. And obviously they're coming to me, so they've realized this is not normal. And I go, just curious, out of 10 friends, how many of your friends have a gut issue? And because women are so much better about talking to each other, they're like, "Oh, probably 9, maybe 10 out of 10." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. You don't have a single friend in your friend group that doesn't have a digestive issue." And the first time I heard this, I was my mind was blown. Now I expect it. If I meet someone that has less than 7 out of 10, I'm like, "Who are your friends and what, cultural change are they on?" Because it's so rare. I actually don't think I've ever heard less than 7 out of 10 from a 20 something. It's just now accepted. By the way, just to throw this out there to everybody listening, if you don't go to the bathroom at least once, if not 2 to 3 times a day, solid formed without pain, that's not normal. If you feel bloated, have cramping, have terrible menstruation, have IBS, have a bunch of food allergies, have anemia or other deficiencies to nutrients when you're eating a normal, not American diet, but mostly healthy whole food diet, that's not normal. It's not okay. Don't accept it, do something about it.
Yeah. No, I know. It's so crazy to me. Every single one of them, and the period problems too. Like they're all, the gynecologist is putting everyone on birth control at like starting at age 12 because they don't know what else to do about hormones.
Yeah. And honestly, I've had women come to me whose family were not pro hormones being put into the body or even implanted into the body, right? So birth control. And this girl was to the point where she was 18 years old and she no longer could walk across a parking lot for a week, a month. And she was in college on her own. She was just like, I need help.
Yeah.
And at that point, even my brain's like, is birth control okay? But what we did is we identified that there was increased C-reactive protein in our body, which is a blood test for inflammation. We saw that there was a little bit of ferritin anemia, which is a type of stored iron. We saw that the liver was a little bit stressed in labs. We go, well, let's just see maybe if parasites is a part of this problem. We could go through 3 parasite protocols, which takes about 3 months, and it was consistent for about 3 months with her. The next menstruation, she cried because it didn't hurt.
Yeah, I remember, I had, like, take the day off, I would probably go through a bottle of Advil, like, pretty quickly my entire life. And then when I started working on my health and I couldn't, oh, that was also my tell. I could always know when I was getting my period because I would cramp. My period would like surprise me. And I'm like, this is crazy. It's really amazing when it doesn't happen.
I've talked to other cultures, not ours, cultures that are less westernized, and I talked to doctors in those cultures. And I said, what is menstruation like there? And they're like, oh, uh, we don't really talk about it a whole lot and I go, because it's just like faux pas? No, because it's normal. Like you get a little bit of fatigue, maybe a 5% increase in fatigue and maybe a little bit of bloat enough to know that it's there. And that's it. That's normal. And I go, oh. And then with clients that I work with, once they're well, that's their new normal.
Yeah, I know. It's really nice to reset people to a healthier new normal. So, is there anything else that people should know with parasites? I mean, I think so many of us just assume as long as we don't go to Peru and drink the water, we're golden.
Unfortunately, we are not golden. And it's so interesting because in westernized culture, we think we're above the rest of the world's problems, right? The third world countries' problems, parasites and these things, and water problems. And the reality is we're not. They deworm twice a year. We should be too. Our ancestors, like farmers that are now 60 and 70, their parents, they deworm the kids twice a year. I've got farmers that are like, yeah, my parents used to hand it twice a year. Um,
Wow, what did they do?
they would just give them medication, just like they were going to give to their cow, cat, dog, horse, whatever. Obviously, humans dosing, but they'd go, oh, it's time to deworm the cows. Let's deworm ourselves. Like it was just normal in the 50s and 60s. It's not that long ago, right? My dad was born in 1952. His generation did this, the farmers, because I treat some of those farmers. And we are not evolving in our health right now. We are devolving. We are killing off our gut bacteria that protect us. We are losing common sense of what the body needs to do. We are damaging our genetic tissues. We are weakening our systems. We are not evolving. We are devolving when it comes to our health. And if you don't believe me, look at all the statistics. Autoimmune disease up 400%. Autism up from 1 in 10,000 to now 1 in 32. You look at chronic illness is diagnosed in 75% of individuals over the age of 40 in the United States. We are not advancing. We're getting worse.
Wow. No, that's really crazy. Well, I really appreciate everything that you're doing to kind of make this, to share this knowledge and information. How can people, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share?
I think we've hit most of it. I mean, that's a lot of info for someone to take in, especially if they aren't used to hearing about parasites. So I think that's it.
Okay, wonderful. And how can people find you and work more with you?
So my Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and website are all Dr. Jaban Moore. I probably spend the most time on my Instagram right now or on my website. So if you want to get a hold of us, just go to Dr. Jaban Moore on whatever platform you're on. And we give out free content every day, just trying to spread the word about the truth about healthcare and what may be causing symptoms in your body.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time and your wealth of knowledge. That was great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this podcast empowered you with some useful information and takeaways. If you liked this episode, please consider sharing a positive review or subscribing. I would also love to offer you my free parasympathetic toolkit as a gift just for listening. It will teach you how to activate the most important nerve in your body to turn on your ability to heal. This free toolkit includes a checklist, a video, and a detailed guide. If this podcast prompted any questions, you can always find answers at my blog at vibrantblueoils.com or my book, Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body. Until next time, wishing you vibrant health.